Hey folks, James here from VP Machine Embroidery. I hope you're all doing well. This is the video tutorial on the stained glass lantern mini quilt, the final kiss of 2022. In this video I will show you the stitch out of block 3 and 8 and the construction of the mini quilt. We recommend you follow our photograph written instructions in conjunction with this video tutorial. And if you haven't already, jump over to the December Kiss Facebook group to receive a 30% discount code on this design. And remember to post photos of your completed projects to enter the monthly competition where we're giving away many prizes to our favorite projects. More details for that will be on the Facebook group. I'll leave a link for that in the description below. If you found this video tutorial helpful in any way, please like and subscribe. Enjoy the video and enjoy your mini quilt. Alright folks, let's start on block 3. Begin by hooping up cutaway stabilizer in the hoop and load the design onto your machine and use applique scissors for trimming the batting and fabric. Place batting 1 on top of the hoop and stitch the batting down. Now remove the hoop from your machine and trim the batting about 1 to 2 millimeters from the stitching. Stitch the place and line for the fabric A. Place fabric A right side up on top of the hoop, covering the placement line, and stitch down. Remove the hoop from your machine and trim the fabric about 1 to 2 millimeters from the stitching. Embroider the quilting on top of fabric A. Repeat the applique process with the fabric B and trim. Repeat the applique process for the fabric C and trim. Embroider the quilting on top of fabric C. Repeat the applique process for the fabric D and trim. Embroider the satin stitch along the raw edges, creating the stained glass look. Now the flip and fold borders. Place one piece of fabric E wrong side up, crossing the placement line by 1/4 inch with the excess fabric towards the inside of the hoop and stitch down. Fold the fabric over, hold taut and stitch down. Trim the top and bottom stitching, leaving the excess fabric in the seams. Repeat the flip and fold process for the left-right window pane using another piece of fabric E. Trim the top and bottom stitching, leaving the excess fabric in the seam. Repeat the flip and fold process for the top of the window pane using another piece of fabric E. Do not trim. Repeat the flip and fold process for the bottom of the window pane using another piece of fabric E. Also do not trim. Well done, you have now completed the stitch out of block 3. Remove from the hoop and trim the seams to about 1/2 inch using your rotary cutter and ruler. Hold aside until all your blocks are made. Alright, moving on to block 8. Begin by hooping up cutaway stabilizer in the hoop and load the design onto your machine. Use applique scissors for trimming the batting and fabric. Place batting 1 on top of the hoop and stitch the batting down. Now remove the hoop from your machine and trim the batting about 1 to 2 mm from the stitching. Stitch the placement lines for the fabric A piece. Place fabric A right side up on top of the hoop covering the placement lines and stitch down. Now remove the hoop from your machine and trim the fabric about 1 to 2 mm from the stitching, and leave the excess fabric in the seams. Repeat the applique process with a candle using fabric B. Trim. Repeat the applique process for the fabric C and trim, leaving the excess fabric in the seams. Embroider the quilting on top of fabric C. Repeat the applique process for the leaves using fabric D. Trim, leaving the fabric in the seams again. Repeat the applique process for the back petals using fabric E. Trim. Repeat the applique process for the front petals using fabric F. Trim. Repeat the applique process for the center of the flower using a small piece of fabric. Trim. Embroider the satin stitch along the raw edges, creating the stained glass look. Now for the flip and fold borders, place one piece of fabric G wrong side up, crossing the placement line by 1/4 inch with the excess fabric towards the inside of the hoop, and stitch down. Fold the fabric over, hold taut and stitch down. Repeat the flip and fold process for the bottom window pane using another piece of fabric G. You have now completed the stitch out of block 3. Remove from the hoop and trim the seams to about 1/2 inch using a rotary cutter and ruler. Hold aside until all your blocks are made. Alright folks, well done. I will now show you how to join the blocks together. Lay out your blocks on a flat surface and decide on your layout. Start off by joining the blocks in rows. Place the first 2 blocks right sides together and pin along one edge, lining up the border stitching and satin stitch points the best you can. Take your time with this process. Then stitch the side seam on your sewing machine. Stitch just inside the border already stitched on the blocks, so the stitching will not be seen on the right sides later. Continue this until you have joined the remaining blocks in that row. Then open out the stitch seams and iron them flat. Then continue this again until you have each horizontal row of blocks joined. Next, join the horizontal rows to each other by placing the first 2 rows right sides together, pinning along the bottom edge, matching up the border seams the best you can. We like to pin the corners and the joins of the blocks. Take your time with this process. Then start off by tack stitching the joins of the blocks together first. Then stitch the seams on your sewing machine. Stitch just inside the border already stitched on the blocks, so the stitching will not be seen on the right side later. Continue this until you have joined all the horizontal rows together. Open out the stitch seams and iron flat. If needed, trim the edges to make them even. Now let's create the backing binding of the quilt. Place backing binding fabric on your table, wrong side facing up. Then place your sewn quilt on top of the backing binding fabric, wrong sides together. Optional, you can spray them together with fabric spray as well. Pin them together. Trim the excess backing so it is exactly 1 1/4 inch bigger than the quilt. This extra fabric will be used as the binding. To keep all the layers of the quilt together, we can stitch in the ditch. This process will help keep the seams flat during the laundry process and will keep it flat during its lifetime. Stitching in the ditch is an invisible finish on the front and the stitching lines are only visible on the back side of the quilt. Ensure the bobbin thread on the underside of the quilt matches the fabric and the top thread on top of the quilt is invisible thread. Starting on any side, fold the backing fabric in half and then fold in half again, making sure you fold it just over your seam stitching and pin. Continue pinning your binding until you reach your first corner. When you get to the corner, try to make a nice mitered corner. Turn your binding in at the corner and continue folding the same way as we did for the first side of the binding. You can iron your fold as you go if this helps with your mitered corners. Fold a final time and pin the corner in place. Continue pinning right around the quilt. Starting anywhere, sew the binding to the quilt just inside the folded edge of the binding. If you want, change your bobbin thread to match your backing. When you get to the corner, simply leave your needle down and lift the foot and rotate the quilt. Put the foot down and continue stitching in this fashion until you're right around the quilt. Once completed, give it a good press with an iron, and congrats, your mini quilt is now complete. Well folks, I hope you enjoyed the final KISS project of 2022. From all the team here at Sweepy headquarters, we hope you have an awesome Christmas and New Year period, and hope to see you again next year for many more fun KISS projects. Shop our wonderful designs at sweepy.com. That's all from me. I'll see you next year. Please like and subscribe.